Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Healing with Mel. This is episode 2. I'm so happy that you're all here listening, and thank you so much for the feedback from everyone who's listened to episode 1. So here I am alone again for episode 2 because I feel like there was a lot that we skimmed over in episode 1, and I wanted to get down to a little bit more details, specifically surrounding the religion, my view on it, my take on it, etc. And then at the end of the episode, I'm gonna kind of dive into what I've chosen now as my form of spirituality, with the way that I've been choosing to live my life authentically as myself. And if I can give you any forms of tips and tricks, that's what I want to do, because I truly believe that everyone should be living their true authentic selves all the time. So first, let's just jump into the religion. What was it? What was it about? Why? All the questions that you guys have been asking. So, the religion that I was born into was I call it a cult, because it was following the teachings of a man who called himself a prophet, named William Marion Branham. You can Google and you can do lots of research surrounding him and his story. So I'm not going to go into too much detail surrounding him specifically. So okay, so the main teachings of this man specifically, who believed was, sent to earth by God himself to teach his sheep, basically, was to tell his sheep that they were all sinners, and that if they didn't follow his rules exactly to the T, they would never make it to heaven, which was, the ultimate goal for any Christian, right? So, being born into this as a child, that's quite damaging, because you create this savior complex, which is a great topic that I'm going to get into right at the end of this episode when I'm talking about my side of spirituality. So I'm just going to save that topic. But when you're constantly stuck relying on someone else, you have a hard time even relying on yourself at all. So growing up in this was quite difficult. We didn't know how to feel properly, and we were told our feelings were not valid either, which is not ideal. So inside this religion, you're told to put all of your worries on God and fully trust and obey. Now, the obeying part, this is what I'm going to get into now. The rules were mostly set on women. Now, for those of you who have not been raised within religions like this, you may not understand the whys behind this, which is why I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can. So, essentially, let's take it back to the very, very beginning of the story of Adam and Eve. Now, most people are taught that this story is simply about God creating a man and a woman, placing them in a garden, surrounded by temptation, and seeing which one would stumble first. Why? I don't know, it's a freaking story. But the general public believes that a snake tempted Eve to bite the apple on this sacred Garden of Eden tree of good and evil. Okay. But in our religion, you know, they really peeled back those layers and revealed to us that the snake was actually Satan. And that he was tempting Eve not to bite an apple, but to have sex. To feel shame around your nakedness, feel shame around sex, and to prove that for some reason in this situation the woman was at fault, even though the man was the one who tempted her. Does that sound familiar, like anything else in society these days? Like everything? The women are always getting blamed, and it's this vicious circle, right? Sometimes the woman is at fault. But in this specific religion, it was always brought back to this story that Eve was the actual temptation, because after she had her little fun business with Satan, she went over to Adam and said, "Hey, well, look at me, shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Let's do the deed. Let's do the boom, boom, bang, bang underneath the tree over there." You guys understanding how they really like to twist and turn what could have probably been a simple story of eating a fruit when you're told not to it being flipped over to sex. Why? Religion. Why? Yeah. Anyways, so that as a basis can tell you lots in itself. So the men inside this religion took it upon themselves to make sure that the women would never tempt them like Eve did, like the women of the world do. And when I say women of the world or people of the world, it means everyone outside of the cult. Just so you know, that's how they refer to them in the cult. So the rules placed upon us as women was extreme modesty. So we were not allowed to cut our hair, because hair acts as a covering, a sign of submission, a sign of purity, a sign of virginity. We're not allowed to wear makeup, because prostitutes paint their face, and we can't look like women of the world. That would be bad. We had to wear long dresses, at least below our knees, preferably between, at the shin level, between the ankle and the knee. Longer, the better, sort of thing. I always pushed it more like right below the kneecap, because I was a bad girl. And what else? Shoes. Yeah, shoes had to be closed-toed. Closed-toed. Why? Because showing your toes might make the men stumble. I'm not lying. I'm not kidding. All of these things are legit. These are things that we were taught to follow. Because it's all on us, and it's not about the men. The men shouldn't be, working on themselves, shouldn't be making themselves stronger. No, it's all on the women to conceal themselves, hide their true identities, hide their true bodies, so that the men don't stumble. What else? Oh, any change of appearance in general basically was not allowed. You had to be your true authentic, quote unquote, true authentic being covered up. Okay, so all of these beautiful tattoos that I have on myself now, big faux pas, big no-nos. No earrings, no piercings of any kind, no nail polish, no jewelry, no hair dye. Even your glasses had to look more modest. I don't know how you make glasses look modest, but they had to be. Everything had to be modest. Yeah. So, oh, and heels. Heels are also something else that women of the night wear, so we weren't not allowed to wear. So flat shoes are like no more than an inch, you know, little teeny tiny little heels. And then on top of the appearance rules, there were many other rules. Like, women were not allowed a role within the church. There's a lot of churches out there that do actually allow women to, you know, lead worship, the songs, you know, do those types of leadership roles. In this specific religion, we were not allowed. There was no role for a woman except for teaching Sunday school or playing an instrument, because teaching Sunday school was what a woman's role was meant to be as a mother, as a parent, as a nurturer, which is why that role was meant for them, quote unquote. And the musician, you know, you're playing guitar, you're playing piano, you're silent. You're over to the side. You're seen and not heard. You can sing in a group setting, or, you know, as the whole congregation is singing along while you're playing your instrument, but other than that, you have no say in the church. And I had a very hard time with that because I am a very outspoken person. I like to say what I'm thinking, and I picked up on that vibe pretty early on when I just straight up got ignored by the authority figures when I brought up something. For example, there was one year where we were doing a choir group for a Christmas caroling session. And I just suggested that we sing the song slightly differently because it would sound better. And all I got was stares, silence. They looked away from me and then they continued on. It's like, I see how it is here. I will never have a say, and I'm not okay with that. And that was the year that I decided to boot it from the church. You know, everything just piled up after years and years and years of toxicity. Now you might be wondering, you know, did the men have any rules at all? They did, but it was, you know, the rules that were also expected on women. They just didn't have many of their own. And by that I mean, like, stay strictly believing in God, don't stray from the path, don't let your eyes wander to women of the world. You know, those rules were placed on us women as well, on top of all the other ones that I just told you. So yeah, they had it way easier, and they could assume leadership roles and whatever. So there's so many topics that I can discuss. It's just so hard to, like, piece them exactly into a way that I want to share them. So, as the eldest daughter, and the daughter who chose to say no, I was criticized hard. The entire church was aware that I was, quote unquote, straying from the light of God. And they were doing everything in their power to rein me back in. My dad started hosting a youth group on Friday nights, to keep me away and keep the other teens away from their worldly friends and have us hang out together. So, and then Saturdays was basically forced family time, and Sundays was church day and God's day, so we weren't allowed to do anything that day either. So the only days of the week that we ever had any semblance of freedom was that Monday to Friday school day. Yeah, so pretty brutal, let's just say. Being the black sheep, I knew I didn't want in, and I didn't know how to get out. And being, I think, the second teen in the church to ever attempt to leave was scary, because I saw how mistreated the other one was. She was also female, and her family took it really hard. Her mother was very dramatic about it, making it very publicly known that she was distraught and saddened for her daughter leaving, and she made an adamant effort to try to force her daughter back in many, many, many times as well. And so my parents were conversing with her and trying to get tips, and of course they were just conspiring together and trying to read up and try to learn different things from different authors and different sources on how they can rein in their rebellious child. And one of those sources was The Strong-Willed Child by James Dobson. Technically, he's Dr. James Dobson, but I refuse to give him that frickin' title. We're just going to refer to him as Dobson. Now, this asshat decided to publish a book telling parents how to discipline the strong-willed child, which was me, with abuse. Inside this book, he specifically says, your hands as a parent are for loving, but there is nothing wrong with using a tool for punishment. I'm not kidding. In this book, he literally says, use a wooden spoon or a spatula, and he condoned spanking. He condoned hitting and manipulation, verbal and physical abuse. And my parents took that book and used it to parent me and my sisters. But me specifically, because I was the strong-willed one who was going against the rules. So yeah, I was spanked, I was grabbed, I was yelled at, I was shoved in my room with the door closed with them berating me for hours at a time, trying to get any sort of detail and truth out of me, and I would sit there in silence. Because I knew if I budged an inch, if I gave them an inch, they would walk all over me, and they would try their best to rein me fully back in and attempt to brainwash me. And since I was brainwashed before by them, I knew I was susceptible to it, so there was no way I was giving an inch. I would not let them emotionally manipulate me any longer. So I would sit there for hours in silence until they left my room and I could breathe. And that's abuse. And if you say otherwise, you clearly haven't lived any sort of traumatic situation. Yeah. So when I chose to fully leave the religion, I was still living under their roof, of course. I was in 12th grade, and that was one of the worst years of my life because under their roof I was alone. I had no one to confide in because my sisters were too scared to step over our parents' boundaries in any way because they saw how I was being treated. Now, whether or not they wanted to leave or not at that moment in time, I'm still not 100% sure, and I'm not sure if they even knew either because they were so brainwashed. But again, that made me completely alone. Except for when I was at school and I had my friends to talk to and I could try to find out who my authentic self was. And I'm so grateful for my friends for that. Now, alongside with the whole strong child Dobson stuff, there's another thing. And we commonly know it as purity culture. Purity was shoved down our throats as women within this cult. We were taught to be pure for God and pure for our future husbands, whoever they may be. Now, choosing them, they made us think that it was completely up to us. Husbands, I mean. But really that wasn't the case either. So let's dive in a little bit into purity culture and how it can differ, you know. Like there's purity culture in lots of different religions, and they view them in different ways and they approach them in different ways as well. And all of them are toxic because it gives this skewed view of yourself as a woman and a skewed view as of the other women on this planet. Growing up, I literally thought every woman had to follow these rules because we weren't told otherwise. So when I reached, middle school and high school, and I started seeing my friends who were girls starting to choose the way that they wanted to dress, speak to boys, and flirt and date. It was really confusing because we were taught that that wasn't allowed and it was frowned upon. But I couldn't deny that I was feeling those things too because I was a teenager with hormones surging through my body, and I was like, what the frick? So, of course, my parents picked up on that because they were reading my journals, which is another topic that I can get into in a minute. And they had to find resources to harness that, contain it, control it as best as they could. So what did they go to? Dobson. Again. And they looked for any sort of resources that he would recommend or use to instill purity in the hearts of the strong-willed child. Bring in Passport to Purity, a program to brainwash the teens into purity. More like a scare tactic, making you feel like you are a dirty piece of shit if you even dare touch, speak, or think about having sex, or in a sexual way, at all, with the opposite sex. Because, same sex is not allowed and doesn't get spoken about in religion, right? So we are only talking about monogamous, heterosexual, man and woman relationship. Because that's all that's allowed in this religion, in the cult. So, now what is Passport to Purity, you might be wondering? It was like a 6-part CD series. Yes, it was on CDs at the time. Where people had themselves recorded explaining why purity is important. And I will never forget this specific demonstration that was written in the guidebook for the parents to perform to show the teen. So this is what my mom did. Oh, so let me move back a second. My mom took me and then each of my sisters separately to a cabin for a weekend by ourselves, so it could just be myself and my mom and my sister and her and our mom, alone, to do this Passport to Purity. Okay, so this was like 3 weekends in a row. She took us each out and we did the program. Okay, so within this program there was many different visual representations that the parents could perform to show the child, the teen, how to keep your purity. So this specific example was, you have 2 pitchers of water, and they're both clean and clear, representing the man, representing the woman. Okay. And then she had a cup of dirt, representing any sexual act done outside the confines of marriage. And she said, imagine if you just kissed a boy. And she took a pinch of dirt and sprinkled it in my pitcher. And sprinkled a little bit in his pitcher. But you're not married. Oh, but you want to kiss again. And then she sprinkled some more. Some more. You want a hug? Sprinkled. You want to think about having sex? Sprinkle. And then what if you did have sex? And then she dumped the rest of the dirt in both of the pitchers. And she said, are they clean anymore? No. Once you've been dirtied, you can't take it back. Yeah. This is what we were taught. And then once that exercise was done, we would sit down and we would listen to the next CD. And this next CD made sure to instill a level of fear in a nice way, you know, sugar-coated, but in a way that made sure that you understood that sex was simply for marriage between a man and a woman. And that if you strayed from that in any form, you would be dirty, you would be sullied, you would be looked at as a Jezebel, and you would be risking your place in the kingdom of heaven. Now, at this point in my life, I was already starting to stray. My eyes had already been opened to the truth outside of the cult. So I took all of this with a grain of salt. In fact, there were a couple parts where I had to really control myself to not burst out laughing, because I could feel the BS so thickly. So much BS. But I was not allowed to disrespect my parents, disrespect my mother for taking the time to spend this weekend with her daughter. So I had to shut up and deal with it. Now, the part that I had to contain myself from laughing was when they were literally trying to explain how sex works in a very, very G-rated way. My God, it was horrible. If I could remember the exact wording, but I've cut most of that shit out of my head, so it was pathetic. Anyways, so once all three of us, so me and my two sisters, finished this program, then it was time for my father to step in and do his part. So if this program was being taught to a son, then the father would have done the program with the son, and if it's taught to a daughter, then the mother does the program with the daughter, because that's how it works. Because the men don't deal with anything to do with women at all. So notice that separation is there, and they make sure it's known on every level. So after the ceremony, or the program, there was a ceremony. This ceremony was now conducted by the man of the house, so our father, because he is the leader of the home and he is the one blessed by God to govern his family. Puke. So he hauls out 3 rings, okay? Purity rings. And he places them each on our ring finger. Yes, the finger that you would place a ring on for your marriage, for your wedding to your husband. Places it on there as basically a sign of claiming, right? If you look at it that way. Him as the father claims his daughter as his own, not to be touched or sullied by any man unless he approves of it. Okay? And when we got our ring slipped on our finger, wow, dyslexic brain. So when we had it slipped on our finger, we had to vow purity until marriage. So I had to place my hand on a Bible. So all 3 of us had to place the hand on a Bible and swear purity until marriage. Cult. So anyone who still was choosing to say that I was not born into a cult, tell me no now. Cult. Okay. So then after that, I actually felt You know, in that moment of receiving the ring, seeing my parents' emotions on their face was enough to slightly brainwash me and reel me back in for a little bit. And that's important for me to say, because that's how easily manipulated you are when you're raised in something that controlling and that manipulative your whole life. Simply seeing the joy and happiness on my parents' face for us doing this ceremony with them made me be like, wow, I actually did something good in their eyes. They're happy about me, which is rare. So then it plays this trick on your brain and you're like, I'm gonna obey for a little bit. So I went to school and I was showing off my purity ring. I let it actually get to me. Yeah. And that was, probably, you know, a good year and a half of me being really on the purity, I'm gonna follow the rules now train. Just from that. And then it slowly started to wither again because I was really not happy at home, not happy with the church. I was sick of the rules and I wanted to be free. So then I started having, you know, from what I explained in episode 1, you know, feelings for different people, started dating, etc. And when I started dating my first boyfriend, it's not Jen, the guy that came between, who I just dated just for the rebellion of it, my dad took that guy aside one day and had about an hour talk with him about what I'm assuming now is the importance of purity, because I wasn't allowed to be part of the conversation. Again, seclusion. I was removed. I was told to go sit and wait elsewhere. I could see them, but I couldn't be part of the conversation. I was the topic of the conversation, but I was not allowed to be part of it. And this poor guy just sat there and had to listen to my dad berate him with all of this religious bullshit, and how if he took my virginity, he had to marry me, or vice versa, he had to marry me and then take my virginity. And that scare tactic was enough for him to dump me within a few weeks. So that was great. Not so much. You know, and that really instilled in me right there that, like, my parents were not on my side and they were never going to be on my side. They were doing this for following the rules inside their own minds and inside the church, inside the cult, inside the religion. And they didn't really give a flying F about my feelings, clearly, because they excluded me from that conversation, which I should have been a part of because he was my boyfriend at the time. So then, fast forward a few months when I started dating Jen. I made sure that that conversation would never happen. I was always within earshot anytime my dad was having a conversation with Jen. And I could tell he tried multiple times to start that same conversation that he had with my ex, with Jen. And I would step right in and be like, hey Jen, wanna go for a walk? Or wanna go do something? And I would cut my dad's conversation short so he wouldn't be able to do it. And thank goodness we only, dated while we were living underneath their roof for about a year. And for most of that, we were in school and we were seeing each other only in school. Because I did not want that moment to happen again and scare Jen away. So as soon as we got to Fredericton, we were like, freedom! And, we did our best to never allow that conversation to happen. And we succeeded. And I think, when we started living together outside of the confines of marriage, and they knew we were having sex outside of the confines of marriage, and that purity was thrown out the window, they then thought that it was their job to continuously remind us of that fact. We are in our 20s at this point, no longer living home, and they thought that they had the right to enter our home and tell us that we were living in sin because we did not abide by the rules of the cult. It was sickening. The feeling I used to get in my gut, the anger that used to boil up inside me. I would want to slap my mother in the face. The amount of control I had to have to breathe, not say a peep, and step away was a lot. A mother is supposed to be a kind and supporting figure in a woman's life. And mine was nothing but a judgmental biatch. So to all of you who have kind, supportive mothers, cherish them. And be grateful for that. Because most women actually don't have that kind, loving relationship with their mother. So yeah, that in a nutshell is purity and my experience with it, and Dobson and my experience with it. Ooh, I forgot to mention another form of punishment. Soap in the mouth. That was one of my mom's favorite. I told my sister to shut up one day and I got soap in the mouth because I was being a strong-willed bad child. Yeah, that was her other favorite form of punishment. Yeah. Okay. Now that I've discussed all of the yucky stuff, let's go on a happier, lighter topic to end this episode off. Because these podcasts are not solely for me to vent and bitch about my childhood. They are a platform for me to help you heal. No matter what you've been through. Whether it's religion, any form of trauma, neglect, abuse. And with all of the things that I've learned over the last few years, it feels wrong not to share. Take it if you want it. Take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Because I know what brainwashing feels like, and I never want to do that to anyone. So I just want to start by saying that spirituality can still be something that you practice in your heart and soul and your mind, even after leaving a high control religion. And that took me years to figure out. I said no to any form of that because it was too close to religion. Too close to the God complex, to the Savior complex. I didn't want anything to do with any of that because it was too triggering. Until 2 years ago, when I really started diving deep into therapy and my healing journey. And I started realizing that even though God was shoved down your throat your whole life and you were told that that was the only thing you should believe in, doesn't mean there isn't anything else, you know? And you don't have to believe in a deity, for goodness sake, you know? My little Buddha hanging out here next to me. I'm not a Buddhist, but do I believe in the fact that meditation, like Buddha teaches, is important? Yeah. Because meditation allows you to reach a level of your own mind, body, and soul that you didn't know you could reach before, because it brings you into your own body, whereas religion makes you rely on someone else, that God complex, that savior complex, always relying on someone else. And meditation, that's the sound of my dryer, apologies. Meditation brings you into your body and it helps you figure out what you need as a person. So let this be the kick in the butt that you need to really start focusing in on yourself. Do it in whatever way you need, but start doing that mindset work and start finding that self-worth that was discarded and thrown away throughout your childhood, throughout your trauma. And know that you are actually worthy to do the healing, and you're worthy enough to keep going and find the person that you're truly meant to be. Be loud and be proud of who you really are, no matter what anybody says. So I'm going to leave you with this episode on that note. Start doing the healing in whatever capacity that you can. If it's 5 minutes alone a day where you just sit, reflect on how you're feeling deep down inside, that's enough. That's a great start. If it's a quick little journal entry, oh, we missed that part. I'm gonna hit that at another episode. If it's just a simple journal entry, if it's a 5-minute meditation, start somewhere, because your soul isn't going to heal if you just keep sitting in the ruminating of your past. And don't just keep thinking of your future either. You have to live in the present moment right now and be okay with how you feel, and know that your emotions are okay to be felt. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Listen to your bodies, start to become in tune with it, and know that you can heal yourself, even though it's going to be difficult and it might take years. 13 years I've been on this journey. And if you need help with anything, and if you want to reach out to me, I am always a listening ear. Feel free to send me a message on Instagram at Melissa Bourbonnais, MELISSABOURBONNAIS. And I'd be happy to help you through your journey. And as always, I want to mention that one thing that has really given me empowerment in my life and helped me and guided me on this healing journey is starting my own business. And having a supportive community going through similar things as you and being there to guide you along your journey is really important. And I want to be your coach to help you do that. So if you're looking for a way to have that ultimate freedom, and I mean by freedom, I mean time with your family, time with yourself. You can take a vacation whenever you want. No longer have to listen to a boss telling you what to do, because that in itself can be triggering. Your whole work environment itself could be preventing you from healing, from your past because you're just keeping yourself in that fight or flight mode in your everyday environment, and it might be time to change that. And if you're ready to change that, then I'm here and I want to be your coach, and I want to help you make that happen. So reach out to me, and I can't wait to get to know you, and I will see you on the next episode. See ya.